Good afternoon, Americans. This is your favorite alien and Bubba here on the afternoon of Friday, April 2nd, 2021, TGIF, and Good Friday. Sitting in for Paul Harvey this afternoon. Stand by for commentary. Well, sitting in for Paul Harvey this afternoon, and the commentary today is on something that Mr. Paul Harvey did way back around 1970, I believe. And his comment at the time was, "From freedom to chains." And like he said in his comment that day, every good government on this planet has had a golden age of 150 years or so. And it's been repeating itself like clockwork. You never learned a lesson. You come, you have 150 years, and then you go. And a good government, that is what he's talking about, good government. And he said there was a lot of good government on this planet before the United States. And this is his words, not mine. And he pointed to some examples: Rome, Egypt, Spain. He pointed them. And then he started a story, which I'm going to try to remember what it was. It's been a while, but there was this country who started out small, where people did everything for each other. And they were there for the good times and the bad times. A lot of hard sweat and tears. Then they found out that they could do it this other way, and it'd be faster, and it didn't cost them a lot of time. We call it technology today. So they started doing things like irrigation for the crops, and then they got vehicles with the wheel, so they started to make their crops into the market faster, and lo and behold, the people liked the market, liked their crops, and they needed more crops to sell, and in the good days and the bad days. And more things came on the line. And sooner or later, they're determined, hey, I'm working too hard here, let me do this. And they started doing that, and they started taking advantage of what was going on at the market, and the market became cities. So the cities, they started doing jobs over there, letting go what they were doing here, and the other people here were there. And the authority, the government, they wanted them to do more. So the government started something that came into vogue, which was taxes. So they started taxing them more on what they ate, what they produced, on what they did. And the people in the cities were having a good time. And to a certain extent, the people in the countryside were having a good time too, because their crops are getting better, they're getting better returns on their hard sweat, and they're building good things. Then they decide, hey, I can get somebody else to do this, and I can have a better time. So they started doing that, getting farm hands and all that. And the city workers started to get new jobs, and other people started to do things that they didn't know. They could just sit there and reap the benefits. And the government starting to do this. But of course, they wanted more from the government, so the governments had to tax more. And this kept on going for about 150 years. They got to the point where the government had to tax them on everything. Had to tax them on what they made, on what they ate, on what they did, as in going to the bathroom, And what they used, whether it's clothes or roads, they had to tax them on that. This got to the point where the people were so impatient because they forgot what they did, their ancestors. They forgot how they got there. And things started to unravel. The government could not tax no more. And lo and behold, everything came to a screeching halt. There was no invasion, there was no nothing. It just, the civilization disintegrated from the inside out. And the nation was no more. They had to start all over again to what they did. The name was Wendell, Emperor of China. And this happened to him. Civilization that during the dynasty that started before him came up to that, and when he was emperor, there was too much taxation there. It went over 25%. And according to Mr. Paul Harvey, anytime you tax persons over 25% of their income, or 25% of what they make, what they eat, and what they do, your civilization is in danger of collapsing. When your national debt gets to a point where it's way over the head, gets to big time, where you can't even spell the numbers that you have to deal with there. It gets, and when people want more and more from the government, but yet put less and less in, that is the problem. And he made China like that. But he also said, he also cost Rome, and he said Rome was the same way. And a good example of that would have been for Rome. He makes the example of the end of the Carthaginian Wars, the Punic Wars, that is, of Carthage, on 146 BC. And that Rome had a golden age from 146 BC to around 10 AD. And yes, Rome had a golden age there because that was the age of the Pax Romana, and Rome was becoming to be big, big, big. But the more the Romans did from 146 BC, they ceased to be who they were, the local farmers, the people that did that, and they started to rely more on military, paid bureaucrats, get goods from other places in the empire as it was growing, their territory, and outside the empire, and get middlemen and all kinds of other stuff here. And by 10 AD, well, Rome was becoming big. It had ceased to be a republic and became an oligarchy, then became an empire under an emperor. And in 4 years after 10 AD, Tiberius took over as emperor. And that launched emperors that were kind of not too good. Some were, some weren't. Tiberius wasn't. His successor, Caligula, definitely wasn't. Claudius was, well, so-so. And then Nero was really bad. And then you came through a bunch of emperors that were if, ands, or buts. Vespasian, Titus, and Trajan and Hadrian. Then you had Marcus Aurelius. And when he died in 161 AD, the empire started to go down. You had emperors such as Commodus, and Septimus Severus. And by the time of his son, Caracalla, in 212 AD, the taxes were getting high in Rome. I mean, really high. And they were like the United States is today. Their debt was probably about equivalent to today's $30 billion debt for the United States. He had to control infrastructure. Didn't we hear that somewhere along the line here from our illustrious president, infrastructure? Well, yeah. But you also had no control over the provinces, and you had different ailments that were coming in, like pandemics that came in and clobbered the empire after 212 AD, and it became the crisis of the third century. Yeah. And within 150 years after 212 AD, for all intents and purposes, Rome was done. Cooked. It was eaten up from the inside out because of the way the people were acting. Taxation of the people, because under Caracalla in 212 AD, I mean, you were taxing everybody. Even going on the road, you had to pay a tax. Sleep, you had to pay a tax. So you had to tax, a tax, a tax. Same as what's happening to the United States. President Biden is saying, we got to tax the wealthy. Really? And I hope Mr. Harvey upstairs is enjoying this, because he tried to point this up in his own Freedom to Chains. And like he said, you go from winning a king, and it starts it all up, so kingship, then you go into oligarchy, dictatorship, and the worst thing of all, and this is according to Mr. Harvey, democracy, with all the disaster that comes in with it. And to destroy, by the time, it's not a sword or pistols or nuclear weapons that destroyed you, you are destroyed from the inside out. Ugh. He was fun about that. And the other nations that he said, Spain was that way, Rome, China, Egypt, a whole bunch of times. You can see it from the Old Kingdom, the Middle Kingdom, and the New Kingdom. Yeah. France got destroyed that way. The British Empire, that's what destroyed it from the inside out. They're still around, but they're just a mockery of what they used to be. And they're just hanging around. Same with the United States. It's heading down the slide. So, sitting in for Mr. Paul Harvey this afternoon, this is your favorite alien in Baba saying, well, Mr. Harvey, they never read Freedoms to Chain, and I don't think they're going to understand this either. Good day.